don't know me, my name's Mike Shilton. I'm a landscape architect, actually trained as an ecologist, then became a landscape architect. I'm now, and I've been working for the last sort of 18 years, as a director at product director at Keysoft Solutions, and we produce BIM-based authoring software for both the landscape and traffic management industries. I'm also the chair of the BIM working group, which has been running now for nearly 3.5 years. And what we're trying to do is offer direction on sort of BIM to the profession. What I'm covering today, obviously, BIM is an emerging technology, it's an emerging process. Things I'm talking about today may change over time, so they don't necessarily reflect what will happen over time, but it's the best snapshot that we've got of BIM today. So what are the objectives today? Well, I'm going to provide a very brief overview of BIM and the benefits of BIM, explain what the Landscape Institute have been doing, are doing to promote BIM to the profession and outside the profession, anybody engaged with landscape design and engaging with landscape architects, and also outlines what we hope to achieve, what you've got to do to achieve level 2 BIM maturity moving forward. So what are the aims of the working group to start with? Well, as I mentioned, it's to really provide guidance on BIM implementation. We'll provide as much as we can resources and feedback on BIM, guidance, notes, resources and standards. If you go to the BIM website or the Landscape Institute BIM web portal, you'll see a lot of information there, guidance information about engaging with BIM, talking about if you've got to buy software, the things to ask, because it often comes down to discussion on software, it's nothing about software. Also talking about how the tools that are available can be applied to landscape projects, so show you how multiple resources can be used in a BIM process. We try and identify the roles and the systems you may be looking to use in a BIM process, depending whether you're the lead person in the BIM process or a consultant contributing. Also, what we try to do where we can is identify not only the benefits but challenges that BIM places on any profession, but particularly landscape architecture, and promote as much as we possibly can the opportunities and benefits, because I think people are seeing the benefits going forward, and they are seeing the opportunities that BIM is offering to not only small practices but large practices as well. So don't think that even the smallest project can't benefit from BIM processes. What the Landscape Institute won't be able to provide is a detailed description how to deliver BIM on all projects. BIM is a process, and just like we can't explain to you how to deliver landscape on all projects because it differs depending on the type of project you're engaged with, BIM is the same. So if you're expecting an off-the-shelf book that says this is BIM in a nutshell, you're not going to get that, because BIM is a process. It's a process of you sitting down, working with your clients, working with the type of projects you're going to deliver, and working out the processes to deliver that over time. So we won't be providing recommendations on software, because BIM is nothing to do with software. Software is an enabling tool for BIM, but it isn't in essence BIM in its own right. So let's start off with what building information modelling stands for. I've been talking about BIM a lot, and somebody said to me once, well, you've gone through a whole session on BIM, not actually said what the word BIM stands for. So just so we are clear, it's building information modelling, and when we talk about building, it's the verb to build something. So we build a road, we build a landscape, we build buildings. So it's the construction process really, and the building of an element, but not only sort of from conception, but right through the whole project and the life cycle of a development. It's nothing to do with software. You can't actually buy BIM in a box. Somebody phoned up and say, I want to buy 35 copies of BIM, please. Well, you can't buy BIM because it's a process. As I said, software enables, but you can't buy it in a box. So people who think they can buy one bit of software and they are suddenly BIM compliant, they need to look at the whole BIM definition and discussion to understand that software is only a small part of it. Because fundamentally what it is, it's a strategic approach to design. So it's looking at the whole life cycle of a project, from inception right the way through to design, construction, implementation, and management, deconstruction almost as well if needed, or re-establishment. I mean, most landscapes are a re-evolvement of what's there existing. So we very rarely have a blank page to work from. It's working with what's already there. So it's a process of taking that through the life cycle and beyond, and looking at better ways to manage facilities. When I talk about facilities and assets, we're talking about landscape assets as well, trees, landscapes, urban parks, etc. Anything that is an asset that can be managed over time. Most of the elements relating to BIM are outlined in a BS 1192. That's got to be purchased, but there are a lot of freely available information, which I'll go through in a second, that help you and guide you through the process. But fundamentally, what it's looking for is a collaboration. It is a collaborative approach to delivering construction information for better developments and better managed facilities moving forward. Let's go back to the beginning. Where did BIM start being defined? I mean, BIM as a process and as a word was probably started around the 1970s, 1980s, so it's nothing new. But the BIM task group put a definition to BIM as it means to the UK particularly. And there's some key elements there that are worth drawing out. Firstly, they're talking about creating a digital or virtual digital model. The idea that if you can create it digitally and iron out all the problems in the digital world, that is most likely going to make sure the project is delivered on time and to budget in the real world. Because as soon as you start putting a spade in the ground, that's when costs and delays start happening when you add modifications. It talks about a 3D model. Some of the projects you're going to be involved with won't need 3D. Where it is essential to make proper design decisions, then 3D is relevant. But there's no point in saying that BIM is 3D if you don't need 3D. If it's not answering the question, what is the purpose of the 3D? And that's what BIM is all about, asking the right questions to know what you've got to deliver. So don't think just by delivering a 3D model, you've cracked BIM, because in most cases it might be other information rather than the 3D that's critical to answer the questions. Because what you're trying to do is deliver data-rich information. Data-rich information allows people to make better decisions. If you can see what you've got in front of you, you can make a better decision about a process, a design, any element of construction, if you've got all the information in front of you. You can also use that to answer questions, because if you've got that information there, you can test things. What if I do this? What if I do that? If I compare this tree to this tree, looking over the whole project life cycle. So again, it's on about the project life cycle. You may want a tree that rapidly grows quickly to start off with, but that may cause maintenance implications. It may be a choice between, okay, we have a slower growing tree, which has less maintenance implications going forward, but may have much greater irrigation requirements. So you start making those decisions, answering those questions, not only at the time of construction, but also for the whole process. But it's all about collaboration. So sharing data, managing data, working with partners to deliver what the client wants. Now, when you look at all of that, you probably say, we'll do most of that anyway, and that's the reality you are. And what BIM's all about really is doing what you're doing now, but looking at better processes and better standards or new standards that are governing how you deliver projects moving forward. To start off with, I think it's worth just identifying some of the key standards and documents that you may want to go and refer to. They're often referred to as the pillars of BIM wisdom. There was 7, there's now 8. All of these are freely available at the moment. So the PAS, which is the publicly available specifications, these are variations or explanations on top of the BS 1192. So you've got PAS 1192, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And they talk about BIM processes, BIM management, data security, etc. And also, and I'll mention this a little bit later, engaging with COBE as a means of exchanging data. There's also the Building Information Modelling Protocol, which sets out again standards and protocols. Government soft landings talks really about engaging the facilities managers earlier in the process. So the facilities manager has an input into the design because they're the ones going to manage the facility after it's been handed over, but also having a soft handover. They have to call it soft landing. So you don't just do at the end of today, right, you know, Mr. Maintenance Person, you're maintaining the project. You have a process of handover where the designer and the facilities manager work together to make sure the systems are in place and overlap quite nicely. So there's a subtle transition, a soft transition between the construction phase and the maintenance phase, where you can iron out information there and ensure that what you want to deliver as a design intent gets delivered from the maintenance point of view. To support this as well, there's the digital plan of works. Some of you will have probably had a look at this. It's freely available. It's a BIM Toolkit. I'll talk about it briefly in a second. But also there's classifications to start to classify information. The value of classification is more for data exchange, because if we can define things and classify things clearly, it makes it so much easier for software vendors to transfer data seamlessly between applications. Therefore, you're not tied into one piece of software because you've got that freedom of moving information around. A little bit like a PDF. It doesn't matter what, as long as you can output a PDF, people can exchange and share that data. So first, let's have a look at what we're saying defines level 2 BIM. Well, fundamentally, it's got to be 2D CAD. It's got to be digital. I'll talk about managed 3D. If the 3D helps answer the questions that the client is asking and helps to deliver a better project, then 3D is relevant. If the question is, I've got to put some trees in this area here and I've got 1 meter roof space, the 3D element is quite critical. If you're doing a park layout where you're just putting trees in to make sort of an arboretum, 3D isn't going to be critical. So the critical element is it answering the question? If that tree is close to a building, 3D could be relevant because of the shading effect, the growth of that over time. So where the 3D is relevant, use it, but don't think you've got to deliver 3D on every project if it doesn't answer any questions. What it's more about is information exchange, making sure you're delivering the right information at the right time to the right people so they can use that to make better informed decisions about the construction process. So are there going to be any conflicts on site? Can we identify them first before we get on site? How do we deliver that? Well, we all deliver our own little BIM level 2s into technically what is called a federated model. That's a shared facility, a shared model where people pull in information from different applications potentially. So it won't necessarily be tied into one software. It could be that you're working with Bentley MicroStation, Vectorworks, SketchUp, AutoCAD, Keyscape, Artisan, whatever. Put it all together into a federated model and using that federated model to start making the decisions. Where people often get confused is where they're saying this is going to be delivered in this format because I want to exchange across disciplines. Really what you should be looking at is not exchanging across disciplines this way, but exchanging across disciplines into a federated model where it can be shared with other people using different software to get a true reflection of what's happening. Because fundamentally, it's not about how you deliver something, it's what you deliver. When you start engaging with BIM, you need to know what your outputs are, what your requirements are, then you step back from that. So, right, how am I going to deliver that? Now, that doesn't mean you've got to go and invest in large amounts of software, lots of trade. It just means stepping back, saying, right, what do we need to deliver to our client and how are we going to do that? And we can deliver that probably by using our existing facilities, software, staff, processes to continue delivering what we're doing now, but just to make sure they follow those protocols that are set out in the BIM plan. Why is this important? It's important firstly because the government said by the start of 2016, that deadline's been pushed a little bit onto sort of May, June time next year. But by next year, the government wanted to make sure that people engaged in the construction process, particularly on the government and the public sector side, were delivering level 2 BIM maturity. So there's been this push from government. But what most of you are probably recognising at the moment is that there's been a big pull from the construction world, because the contractors particularly, and architects, have been identifying this benefit of BIM, the ability to collaborate and share and make better decisions earlier, and say, well, actually, if we can benefit from BIM now, why wait for 2016? So you probably find that the biggest driver for most of you to be here today is because you've been asked it by the design consultants or contractors you're working with or clients, rather than the push from the government. So why are we trying to do it? Well, as I said, it's trying to sort of provide information earlier in the process. If you've got information earlier, you can make better design decisions. You can reduce conflicts, the need to rework during the construction phase. All of those add delay and potential cost to the project. What you're trying to do is reduce waste as well, both in materials and time. There's nothing worse than spending a lot of time designing something and then having to go back to the drawing board to redesign something. It's better to actually say, right, this is what we need, we've made the correct decisions, and we can move on quickly to deliver that, knowing that the information is correct and you haven't got to do a lot of abortive work. If we can do that, we're making better decisions, therefore we're going to have better performing landscapes. If we're picking the right trees, the right level of irrigation, the right level of maintenance, we'll end up with a better product, a landscape, to the sort of client. It's also about that review and approval process. So we're trying to avoid, as you see in the bottom left-hand corner, or right-hand corner rather, situations like that where people have just literally, or designers have just literally weren't aware a manhole cover is going to be placed there. That little bit of grass is never going to survive. But those are the sort of decisions that happen on site sometimes, that you know are just never going to sort of work. If we could have identified that problem earlier, a decision could have been made about the location, the position of things, to avoid those things happening on site. Not saying it's never going to happen, but you're trying to minimise that risk. One of the things we often talk about when we're sort of moving data between everybody else is that we don't receive data in a good format. We have to spend a lot of time. How many times you get a drawing from a client in the wrong scale, the wrong location, there's information missing, you can't interpret things, things are not layered and structured properly. You spend a lot of time taking a drawing and rationalising to make it into something you can use. That rationalisation can not only time, but also the potential for you to misinterpret things. So you can end up with situations where people are misinterpreting, which obviously impacts down the line in the whole process. So what we tend to find happens generally is we produce data, and then rather than passing all that down, we dumb it down. We give somebody a PDF and some documents, and they have to interpret that, recreate that data. They go and produce their information. They dumb it down to a PDF and documents that get passed on. Each of those dumbing down is a potential for errors to be, or time, cost, and errors to be introduced into a project. So what we're trying to do fundamentally is iron that out and deliver a linear sort of process of design. So we're trying to pass on the information, as much information as possible, rather than dumb it down, so people at the next stage in the process can make better informed decisions. I often sort of, when I first started looking at BIM, the concept of a Haynes Manual came into my mind, because when I go and buy a car, if I go and buy a Haynes Manual, that doesn't tell me absolutely everything about the car, but it tells me enough information for me to make valued decisions about whether I can maintain it myself. And if I have, I've got drawings there, I've got photographs there, and I've got text there. Each of them explain in different levels what's required. Sometimes the text is sufficient, sometimes a diagram is sufficient, and sometimes a photograph is relevant. So it answers the questions of the relevant sort of parts that need replacing. You can also go to the back of the chapter and look at the specifications. So if you've got to replace a light bulb, you can see how to replace it, and you can see where the part number is and what you've got to do to replace it. I don't need to know exactly about every fitting about that, every element about the bulb. I don't need to know every element about the socket. I just need to know where it is, how to replace it. And that's what you're trying to do with BIM. You don't have to give everybody everything, but you're trying to give people enough information for them to make informed decisions about whether they can do it themselves, they've got to go somewhere else, or they go to a mechanic. So we're trying to deliver data in a way that people can use it, in a standard format that people can share, so we can make better informed decisions. And the way you do that is to start with the end in mind. So think about, what have I got to deliver, and then start stepping back to say, right, how do we deliver that? Not just myself, but as a project team. So starting with the end in mind, we can set phases of what we've got to deliver. And what BIM is start to move towards, and this word starts to come in a little bit more recently, is what we call lean construction. If you've looked at the manufacturing side, obviously it's all about just-in-time management. They deliver just enough information, just enough materials for people to construct just the right number of cars and parts at the right time to pass on to the next phase. So you'll often see when there's these delays at ports, they say this could have significant impact on car manufacturing, because they've worked on this just-in-time management. We just deliver enough information so there's not a stock pile of materials waiting, which is cost sitting in the store, or we're not over-delivering on cars, so there's a lot of cars sitting on forecourts. We're just trying to deliver enough information and enough cars to deliver what we need at the right time. And that's what we're looking at here with information. So you're trying to provide the right level of information to make the right decisions at the right time to move to the next stage. And none of that has really got anything to do with software. It's about managing your processes. And as I said, software can help on that. So what are the benefits to the client? If you can make better informed decisions and you can be more confident and more predictable in the outcomes, you're reducing the risks to the client. If you can say to a client, we reckon that this project, we've costed it out, we've done a lot of work, and we've done a lot of management of processes, and we can guarantee that we're within 10%, it's going to cost you £5 million. The client can then make a valued decision, and if you can hit that within 10%, then you know that it's going to come back to you for more projects, because you can guarantee that if you're saying it's 5 million every time, it's going to be 5 million. If you're saying somewhere between 3 and 6 or 7 million, then the client's got a bigger decision to make. And if it's going to be 7, that could be a problem. If it's going to be 3 and it ends up being 5, that's a problem. So if you can be more precise in your outcomes through better decision making earlier in the process, then the client's reducing their risk and more likely to invest. In fact, I won't name the person, but I know somebody's engaged with the BIM project, and the first phase of the project was on it was £5 million, and there were £50,000 out on the phase 1 with their estimate. Just on that basis, they got the tick to go straight to phase 2 without any development or any extra work, simply because they hit that 5 million that they guaranteed almost. And the client says, right, you hit that one, you hit the right target, move on to the next one, because we're now confident you can manage your project within the next phase of the budget. So it's made their life easier. Haven't got to go through a whole round of processes of re-engagement. They've got that straight away. And the client's happy because they know that the consultant is working within very tight budgets, and they know they can deliver to those budgets. So what it's going to do, again, is mentioned about improve overall quality, more collaboration, the more likely you're going to have better landscapes. It's going to reduce the construction costs because we're going to have less delays. And the whole project life cycle, if we can start making good informed decisions about the choices at design and construction phase that impact on the life cycle of the project, that's going to be beneficial. Because if you look at, I always use the example of the M1, consider the cost of the M1 at construction phase and the cost of the M1 maintenance. The cost of the M1 probably is 1,000 times more in maintenance in terms of retarmacking, reworking, chevrons, lights, etc. That maintenance is far outweighed the initial construction cost. And when you look at any facility, the actual maintenance part of it, the construction part compared to the maintenance part, is very small. So if we can make good decisions in the construction and design phase, that will have a big impact on the facility and its long-term management. So what are the Landscape Institute doing? Well, we're trying to comment and support sort of get involved with the protocols, the standards, the documents, having a say on what those are, and in some cases pushing that. There's a lot of information if you want to investigate further on the BIM portal. So if you go to the Landscape Institute's website and just go /BIM, or go to knowledge and then BIM, you can get to the latest information on BIM. And what are we doing at the moment? Well, we're working at the moment on product data templates. These are, there's 65 been identified, and there's, I think it's about 500 or so in the construction industry as a whole. And what these are, it's a way of you sending out information to manufacturers and suppliers, and then giving you consistent information back. It's sometimes referred to as a questionnaire for comparison. So you send out a product data template, they complete it, and they send you back a product data sheet. And the best example I can give you is when you go onto a Curry's website, if you're looking for a TV, you can compare one against another. Now, if you've got the same categories, you can compare whether one has got it or hasn't got it, or has got this type of connection compared to this type of connection. You can make a valued decision on which product suits the needs of the project. If you just say this person supplies a bench and this person supplies a bench, but you've got no other criteria to make decisions on, you've got no ability to understand the lifetime cost of one bench over another. What the product data template will give you is that ability to look at the whole aspect of how it's supplied, fitted and potentially maintained. That gives you a better input into the choices of materials you're going to use, the type of products you're going to specify. As I said, there's 17 available on the website at the moment, including one for flora, seedings, soils, bat boxes, but they're examples. If you want to have a look at the website, please do so. Please contribute back. There's still more to do by the end of this year. We're hoping to get 65, and then we're going to go through a round of promotion of product data templates next year. And the advantage of this, because it's in a structured format, it can start feeding into software, so we can start engaging the manufacturer's information into the BIM process. There's also available freely the Digital Plan of Works, NBS BIM Toolkit, if you go and search online for that. This is a great tool for small practices, and it's really a project management tool, and it matches to the now 7 stages of construction. There's a new one at the end, which is all the facilities management, stage 7. But it's trying to map out at each stage of the project what level of information is required, who's responsible, and what people's roles are within that BIM process. So if you want to go and look at it, you can start using that for projects and start identifying roles, responsibilities, and what data's got to be delivered and the level of data. And I'll talk about that in a second. So when we talk about level of data, at each stage of a project, you need a certain amount of information. At the start of a project, you need to know there is a thing. As you go to the next stage, there is a thing of this approximate size. It goes to the next stage, it's a thing of this size, which is this, it's a tree. We don't know what type of tree yet, but it is a tree. Okay, we go to the next stage, right, this is a tree of this, so it could be a semi-mature tree, but we don't quite know what type of species it is yet. We go to the next stage, it's a tree, it's a semi-mature tree of this species, and we probably need to start now looking at this type of underground fixing. So at each stage of the project, and you're probably familiar with this anyway, because you're not making these decisions right at the beginning of the process, it's stepping through and knowing what's going to be delivered at each stage to deliver that to the client. And understanding that at some cases, information may be more important than graphical, because if the decision is the choice of species for maintenance, the species choice is better to be known earlier in the process. If it's all about the conflict of routes and services, then the graphical content might need to be delivered earlier. So in some cases there will be in sync, in some cases there won't be. The level of information, level of detail, which is level of detail, the level of graphics effectively, can sometimes be out of sync depending on the questions that need to be answered within the project. There's a lot of discussion about the deliverables of BIM. one of the big ones that gets branded about a lot is COBE, which stands for Construction Operations Building Information Exchange. So it's data that can be used for the construction or built up over the construction phase, but used in the operations phase of a building facilities management moving forward. So it's really providing data in a format that can be used in facilities management. It's effectively a project data set. The great thing that is, because it's a project data set, it can be accessed using standard spreadsheet data. So people often mistake COBE as a spreadsheet. It isn't, it's more than a spreadsheet, it's a data set, but it can be opened and exposed and edited in Excel, which means that anybody that can open Excel and can populate and copy and paste can exchange data and input into the BIM process, because even a manufacturer that doesn't have CAD can go in there and start putting information about the product code, information about fixing, etc., in the data sheet. It doesn't include any geometry, so this is just literally the data. But a lot of people get hung up about COBE, and generally talking to most people implementing BIM, they're not delivering COBE as an output. They're delivering what the client wants as an output to fit into their facilities management project or software or processes. So whilst COBE is a deliverable and may be specified on some government projects, you really need to talk to the client about what they require for facilities management, what format of information they require in what structure and what standards, so that you can meet that, and that may have nothing to do with COBE as a deliverable. So whilst it's a government deliverable, it may not necessarily be a deliverable on most projects. In fact, most people I talk to on a BIM project don't actually deliver COBE. So what are the Landscape Institute doing? We've mentioned about we're working with the product data templates. Many years ago, about 3 years ago, we asked people to declare their level of BIM. That created a lot of scaremongering within the profession, deliberately so, I think, because it started the dialogue. We put on the website, and you can still use this now, it's a very simple Excel spreadsheet, a self-assessment tool, which allows you to understand where you sit in terms of delivering level 2 or level 1 BIM, where you are in that process. We've offered a lot of guidance, there's a lot of guidance notes on that BIM portal. We've gone through a process of round 1 awareness on BIM, which was sort of 2013-14. We're now delivering some masterclasses. We're now at the end of the masterclass series. The last one is next month up in Scotland. I think Lauren will mention more about that at the end of the process, today's presentation. And we're also finishing off, which should be going to the publishers in the next few weeks, a book for BIM for Landscape. That will be delivered early 2016, and we'll go through the whole process of understanding what BIM's about, implementing BIM, what you need to think about, and also the detail of BIM. So it's effectively 3 chapters, 1 introduction, 1 getting to grips with BIM, and the 3rd one really getting involved in BIM in a detailed way. But what we're trying to do is promote this practical approach to BIM, because BIM isn't like a light switch you can be off on one day and then turn on another day. It's a process you've got to go through over time. And we're currently planning for 2013, and dare I say, BIM level 3 has started to come on the horizon as well. So we're starting to look and think about preparing the profession, not only for looking at implementing BIM level 2, but thinking about what level 3 looks like, and start to set some goals for that. And I want to just sort of finish off with, sort of preparing for BIM and what you think about BIM and what it's all about, really. And one of the great examples I saw was Richard Lane. I went to a presentation at the RTPI, and Richard Lane from the BIM Task Group gave a great analogy. He said, if you think about getting fit, BIM's a little bit about getting fit. Some of us know we should do it, and we don't. Some of us do it, and we do it on a small level because that suits us and our family and everything else and our commitments. Some of us do it on a more sort of at a higher level, and some of us even become gold medalists, Olympic stars. Also, some of us do it on our own. Some of us work in sport with teams. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's a full team. And sometimes when we're doing sport, we're doing it at different levels with different people. So with one person you're playing squash, with another person you're playing cricket, or you're going running. And it's going to be like that, because on every project it's going to be different. And your engagement will be different depending on your relationship with the client, the nature of the project, what you can deliver, and what you want to deliver. Because it's all about that. Preparing for BIM is all about what you can deliver and what the project needs. So there's 2 key elements to that. One is understanding your own BIM strategy. So think about your BIM implementation plan. Is what does BIM mean to you? What do you want it to mean to you? What do you want to deliver to your client? Not only as your own business, but also what new work may you want to gather, or clients do you want to work with, and what type of work do you need to do to get them to engage with you, or you to engage with them. So what you're trying to do is look at your business plan. Where do you as a company want to be in 3 to 5 years' time, and align that with your BIM strategy. How are we going to get there? What do we need to do? If we want to be there, again, it's think about the output in mind and then work back. If in 5 years we want to deliver this and work with our clients to produce this type of information, how do we get there? And let's start looking at milestones along the way to get to that point. We often refer to them as BIM wins. We try to look at a 5-year plan, and on each project try and deliver a new win on that project that advances us towards our end goal. Now, when we start working with projects, we'll have a requirement from the client, and then we'll deliver what's called a BIM execution plan. That is how we are going to deliver this project to the client. That execution plan fundamentally defines BIM for the project. So for one project, BIM will mean completely different to another project. If you're engaged with a rail project, it's more likely that Bentley will be the core software. If you're involved with an architectural practice, it could be Revit or SolidWorks is a type of output, or ArchiCAD rather. If you're involved with mechanical, it could be something like SolidWorks. If you're involved with a landscape project, it could be GIS is the tool you've got to work with. So saying that one bit of software is going to deliver all you need is incorrect, because it depends on the BIM execution plan, what you've got to deliver, and then look at how you deliver that. And the way we sort of look at it, that fundamentally, is that you've got your employer's requirement, and that generates an execution plan on a project-by-project basis. So each project will have an execution plan, and what you want to try and do with it, each project you engage with, is move along your BIM implementation plan. So with project 1, we're going to deliver this. We're going to get to grips with our CAD standards. Project 2 is we're going to get to grips with the way we receive drawings from our suppliers, and we issue drawings to our suppliers. So it's looking at those small wins on each project, and that's something you've probably done over many, many years, developing CAD standards to get to where you are now. Think about the same with the BIM process, and make sure it aligns with your BIM strategy for the company itself. And then finally, sort of where do you go from here? What's your next step? I think fundamentally it asks more questions. I said to somebody the other day, I said, if somebody came to you and said, you know, do you do landscape? You wouldn't just say, yes, I do landscape, and run away and do landscape. You'd ask questions. What do you mean, do I do landscape? Well, do you design landscapes? Yes, I design landscape. What do you mean by design? Are you talking about a park? Are you talking about visual impact assessment? Are you talking about a construction detail? You need to understand what the landscape, designing the landscape means. And you ask lots of questions and understand what the project's about. When people say, do you do BIM? We say yes, and we run away and panic. It's asking more questions. If you ask more questions, you'll understand. Ask the client, what do you mean by BIM? And then ask the questions, what do you need me to deliver? If I know what I've got to deliver, then I can make better value decisions about how I deliver that. So talking to your clients is essential. Talk to them about what they're looking to do now, what data they require off you, and how you deliver that. Talk to your employees. They'll have skill sets, or they'll have aspirations as well that may align to your company strategy, and how can you engage with them in that process? and get them more involved. It might require training, it might not. If you've got to invest in training, obviously work with them and your clients to make sure you invest in the right level of training. I know that many people have gone out and bought software and trained on it and never used it. Make sure you ask the right questions to know you're going to deliver the right information, then step back, look at your processes, look at your software, say, can we deliver that? If we can't, what have we got to do to deliver it? And then start tailoring your training, your software, your requirements and your processes to deliver that, rather than just go out and buy software per se. Set realistic goals. Think about each project, a BIM win on each project. Look at a project, so this project is going to involve 3D. Let's look at embracing 3D on this project. This one's all about data exchange, information exchange. So let's look about how we receive and pull data together and share that in a collaborative way. So set realistic goals, making sure you're moving towards your end goal in 5 years' time. And again, identify suitable projects, can't say it now. Projects, making sure that you work with the right clients that you want to work with, suitable to meet your needs going forward, your aspirations for the company. Okay, it's going to be a bit of flexibility there, but it's trying to get that BIM implementation plan together so you can confidently say that in 5 years' time, this is where I will be, and this is how we're going to deliver it. We've worked with our clients, we're making sure we're delivering the right information at the right time so they can make good decisions, reducing their risk to produce better landscapes moving forward. So today what I've gone through hopefully has given you an overview of what BIM is and its benefits, explain some of the things the Landscape Institute is doing, and again, please keep the dialogue going. If we're doing things that you'd like, or if we're not doing things you'd like us to do, let us know. If we are doing things that you feel is inappropriate, again, let us know. As I said, we're not going to recommend software, so it's all about you understanding your process. You've got the right to go and talk to any software vendor and have demonstrations. That's not the Landscape Institute's realm to go and say use a particular piece of software. And we've talked about how you achieve level 2 BIM maturity, which is effectively your 2D managed 3D and data pulled together in a federated model to deliver the right information to make the right decisions at the right time. For further discussions and information, you can please go to Laura mentioned some of the BIM sort of websites. We've got the BIM protocols, the BIM portal is available. We've got Talking Landscapes, which is the social network. There's also a BIM for Landscape forum as well. And there's a good website, BIM Talk, where a lot of information gets published around BIM, and the Landscape Institute are involved in that as well. So those are good points to go back to for information. And again, watch out for the book, which will be coming out next year. So at that point, I'll finish. There's a few questions. I'll take them now if that's okay. There's a question about will the webinars be available. The webinars are being recorded and will be made available on the website for viewing later on. It's asking the question, will landscape and urban design be considered earlier in the design process? The hope and aspiration of a BIM project is that you'll be engaged earlier in the project, because you've got to make informed decisions based on the relevant information. So if you haven't got the landscape information and urban design information earlier in the process, you're not making better informed decisions, and the chances are you'll be engaged longer in the process, because you've got to work with the facilities managers to hand over this soft landing of the construction phase into maintenance. And we've got to get over this little sort of silo effect where it's sort of, I'm going to employ you to do the work, I've done the work, throw it over my shoulder, onto the next project, throw it over the shoulder. If we're going to engage with BIM, the first thing you should say, if the client says to you, we're going to engage in BIM, you should say, thank you, that's great, because now I need to be involved earlier and later in the process. Talks about BIM and sustainability and carbon issues. One of the big elements of BIM is to deliver a 20% reduction in carbon emissions. So It's deliver better, leaner construction, better material choices, reduce carbon over the lifetime of a project, not just the construction phase, but the lifetime of the project. Went to a seminar many years ago. It was under the banner of sustainability, which you could put, sorry, I stopped doing that, under the banner of sustainability. And somebody said, if you start looking at a footpath, you might argue that granite sets, because of the carbon, embedded carbon in the granite sets, would be probably, you wouldn't use them because of two reasons. One, the carbon, embedded carbon, also the cost. But if you compared that to putting down a gravel footpath that might need to be ripped up every 20 years, so you've got people coming in, ripping it up, taking away, putting new material down, the carbon cost of that over, say, 100, 200 years, where that granite set paving could be there for 200 years, over a 200-year project or life cycle, the actual granite set could be a better choice for the carbon and sort of cost, an ongoing cost of a project, than a gravel footpath. So yeah, it's an important factor in that life cycle management. Carbon offsetting, it's all part of that, making sure you're making the right decisions about choices of plants and sort of facilities management and how that's getting involved. Says what format will the book for landscape be available? So the format of the book is going to be literally I'm looking at probably just slightly over an A5 pamphlet type, and it's going to be fundamentally three sections. Section 1's an introduction to BIM, very similar to what we've been talking about today. Section 2 is going to be about BIM implementation, the things you need to think about, BIM execution plans, BIM implementation plans, and then phase 3 is more the technical side of BIM, understanding the processes and the detail that goes behind some of those standards I mentioned and how that impacts on a BIM project. Okay, there's a mention about BIM for landscape on LinkedIn, which that's going to hopefully support what we're going to be doing from the Landscape Institute point of view. What's the MBS doing? Is it going to compromise what the allies do? No, the MBS are part of, Anna Decker is part of the BIM working group, so she's inputting. We've had a small input and she's had a big input into the BIM Toolkit. So we are actively involved with that and commenting on that. The hope and aspiration is that it will support, not contradict, or it will complement what's there. So about changing people's behaviours regarding landscape. I think as we engage more, people will start understanding the benefits of landscape and the implications of landscape moving forward. So I think it will actually raise the whole profile of landscape overall. I think that's more or less it. I think yeah, I think I've answered most of the questions that are on there. So what I'll do, I'll hand back to Lauren, who can round up.
Hello everyone again. I hope you enjoyed that presentation. Thanks, Mike. I've just gone through the questions as well, and there are none for the LI. And I think, Mike, you've answered them all. As I said before, if you do think of anything afterwards, we'll be sending back a feedback form, so just put them in there, and either myself or Mike can answer them. Mike also touched upon the fact that these webinars are being recorded and they're all going to be uploaded onto our YouTube channel within the next week or so, I believe. We'll be sending out a link to all our members when that's done, and anybody that attended the webinar. So thank you very much for coming, for listening, for your questions. Thank you very much to Mike for presenting, and hopefully we'll see you next week for a talk by Carl Jones on lighting. All right, thank you everybody, and goodbye.